Hi, Peter. Hi. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I hear you.
Perfect. Hello,
Hi there.
Derek.
Hi there.
Hi, welcome to our spaces. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Hey, everyone.
Hello. I think we're just going
Hey.
to wait 1 or 2 minutes for a couple more people to join, and then we will get started. Okay, everyone, let's get started. Welcome, and thank you for joining another one of our Twitter Spaces. Today, my co-host Peter and I will talk to Derek Yu from Moonbeam and Jason Ma from Axelar about building in the bear market. So all of our projects share a joint vision to create a cross-chain future by providing the proper infrastructures to both developers and users. And our guests have undoubtedly accumulated a great deal of knowledge on what it takes to build, regardless of the market conditions. We're excited to dive deeper into the topic and also to have all of you here. So before we get started with the round of introductions, just a couple of things about our Twitter space. The session will be an hour where Peter and I will have a 30-minute roundtable with our guests. And towards the end of the session, we have carved out around 15 to 20 minutes for audience Q&A. In the meantime, please feel free to write your questions for our guests in the designated Twitter Spaces comment section or react with the emoji feature, which is on the bottom left-hand corner. So let's jump right into a round of introductions. Derek, why don't we start with you? Tell us about how you got started in crypto and how your project is involved in the space.
Sure thing. Uh, so my background is really a longtime builder, coming from the Web 2 space. Actually started off like my career even like way back when, like Web 1, first like kind of internet wave. So I spent most of my career building companies in the Web 2 space, including a B2B SaaS business where I spent some good 13, 14 years building up a cloud technology business from two of us kind of starting in a garage to at its height is about a 700-person company. So definitely learned a bunch about building software, building businesses like from the Web 2 space. But then since the beginning of 2019, I've been building in the Web 3 space. I'm definitely definitely here to stay. This is definitely home for me now. Yeah, I think that but maybe this kind of background, this Web 2 background, company building background, is a little bit unusual in the Web3 space. So I think that's given me some some insights and some maybe some different ways of thinking about things or approaching things versus what you might find typically in Web3 projects.
Great, thanks. Jason, how about you? How did you get started in crypto, and how is Axelar involved in the space?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Jason. I'm on the business development team at Axelar. So I'm actually an engineer by training. I've always enjoyed building things growing up. So, after school, I ended up joining a consulting firm hoping to build big Fortune 500 companies. Realized there's not a lot of building in those kind of places, just a lot of optimizing, and then later joined some fast growing tech companies. But, with a lot of these fast tech companies, what I've learned firsthand was that there isn't a lot of real technology behind it. A lot of times it was just spending a ton of capital to pursue growth. And that's why Web3 and crypto was really appealing to me, because it was this truly disruptive technology. And by the time I really got into the space, it was really the emergence of lots of these different blockchains, different layer ones. And I thought the bigger problem must be interoperability, and how do you actually get these different blockchains to talk to each other? So I ended up joining Axelar. Axelar provides secure cross-chain communication infrastructure that allows DApps to go beyond token transfers. We have something called message passing that allows you to pass arbitrary data across different blockchains. And the implication of that is you can now build all kinds of unique use cases like cross-chain swaps, cross-chain lending, marketplaces on top of the Axelar platform.
Great. Thank you, Jason and Derek. And Varun, hi. We are actually just doing a round of introductions. So if you could tell us how you got started in crypto and how your project is involved in the space.
Hi, Jenny. How are you doing? Sorry, I was running a bit late.
I'm good.
I had a bit of trouble.
Oh, no worries.
Here we are. Hey, guys. This is Varun here from Hashflow. And a bit of an intro on Hashflow and myself. Well, I'll start with Hashflow first. It's a decentralized exchange protocol in simple terms, meaning anyone can go and trade without the counterparty risk of custodying the funds with us or any of that sort. And the reason it's interesting is because we've built a bunch of primitives, including allowing users to natively do cross-chain swaps, being able to swap without any slippage or front-running or MEV attacks. And now we are in the process of expanding to more products that people can trade, including ETFs and other primitives, which would be interesting down the year. So that's Hashflow in a nutshell. In terms of how I got into crypto, it's a long story, but before crypto, I was an aerospace engineer. So I was doing mostly building cube satellites and robotics. Right? And then after that, 2016-17 period is when I got into it. I think the key motivator was basically I saw crypto as to money what the internet was to the flow of information. And it felt very much like the internet of the early 90s. And I'm like, okay, if there is one space where I want to make a difference, this is the one. So here we are.
Great. Yeah, lots of different backgrounds, and glad that you guys have all made crypto and Web3 your new home. I definitely feel the same way. Jumping on to our topic of today, which is, of course, building in the bear market. And Varun, I'll start with you here. How has the bear market impacted your project over the last year?
I would say this is actually, from a product utility standpoint, it's been fairly consistent, I would say. We still have about 2,000 to 3,000 daily active users currently, and we're doing about like 20 to 30 million in trade volume every day. So there were periods where there was extreme volatility, so the volumes actually went up. And then right now, I think generally the organic retail demand in DeFi is kind of low. So despite that, the volume that's coming in is pretty decent, right? And I think also, but beyond that, I think this is actually a good time and opportunity for us to build a really good product, right? Because there's less noise in the market, and B, we are pretty well capitalized, and the team is pretty strong, and there's actually plenty of time to fast actually fine tune the product to build a more consumer friendly application. But also, I think it's actually good because this is where you can actually do things that otherwise wouldn't be possible in the bull market, where there's tons of distractions. So I think in a way, I see this as a blessing to be in this position where things are going fairly smoothly, and more importantly, I think this is actually the best time to build. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Great, Derek. How about you? Do you agree? And how has the bear market impacted Moonbeam?
Yeah, and I realized that I didn't answer the second part of your question the first time around, so maybe I'll just really quickly just give a description of Moonbeam so people have that as context, and then I'll answer the question that you asked. So,
Go ahead.
Moonbeam is a smart contract platform. It implements the EVM programming environment, but it is kind of purpose built or optimized for cross-chain use cases. And so, that's kind of what Moonbeam specializes in. It can do that partially because it's a parachain on the Polkadot network, so it has native access to XCM, which is the native Polkadot, cross-chain messaging technology. But it can also do that via integrations and folks that have deployed, interoperability technologies onto Moonbeam. So Axelar falls into that category, where there are a number of development teams that are leveraging Axelar's cross-chain messaging system that Jason described to build all sorts of interesting new architectures, new kinds of applications. And so, that's kind of, the vision is really that if there's a world with a lot of blockchains in it, these blockchains then need to communicate with each other. And the idea is for Moonbeam to be a facilitator to kind of help developers express logic and to connect, these different blockchains together in interesting and novel ways. In answer to the question of the bear market, I would largely agree with many of the comments that Varun made, which is that less noisy, more chance to focus, time to be thoughtful about feedback, to think about to be thoughtful about new implementations. Been spending quite a bit of time gathering input from the community. It's a time for, I think, the kind of core community to to be strong and to kind of express itself and to double down on their engagement. All the kind of tourists, the kind of passersby are gone, and kind of what's left are the people that are really the core community, right? And so I think there's been we've actually seen an increase in engagement on things like governance and deciding on different directions from the core community about Moonbeam, at least. So I see it similarly, that there's it's a great opportunity, this kind of quieter, less distractive time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also been a nice time to build. And Jason, I will pass on to you. How's it been for Axelar?
Yeah, I agree with what Derek said. I mean, partners like Moonbeam have actually just been really great during the bear market. Axelar, I would say, has actually indirectly benefited from the bear market, given that we're an infrastructure provider, right? So our target audience are developers. And what we've noticed is during the bear market, because there's less active users, less engagement across these different blockchains, cross-chain has become more important. Most applications have started building cross-chain right from the get-go, or expanding to go cross-chain so they can, engage users across all of the chains, as well as other benefits like unifying liquidity. So we saw an increase in demand of developers wanting to use Axelar's technology. A second thing that came out of all of the recent fiasco, like the implosion of FTX that caused this bear market, was that people now really care about security. People care about transparency and decentralization. And these are all the core value proposition of Axelar and our points of differentiation. So because people care more about these, we've seen more developers coming to build on top of Axelar.
Yeah, Jason, thanks. Thanks for the rich answer. I agree about the about the cross-chain topic, and moving from like developers and project sides more to the community side, and the perspective for average users of different crypto projects. We see that in 2022 one of the biggest trends among crypto projects was using community incentives, airdrops, testnet rewards, and ambassador program rewards. Have your community engaged with such initiatives of your during the bear market? Anything else your team have tested over the last few months that worked for community or didn't work? Really excited to share to learn your experience, and probably we can start with the Derek.
Sure. I think actually that I don't know if it's a contrarian take, but a lot of these things you're describing, I think work well, like when times are good in the bull, but like they don't really work all too well, like in the bear market. And I think that the bear market's really when the weakness of like those approaches gets exposed, because honestly, I think that like all the people that are attracted by those things are gone now. And so I think what you realize, at least the way I think about it, is that this core community I talked about, like the nucleus, kind of the people that are going to be around no matter what the market conditions are, they're largely not like motivated by like token giveaways, right? I mean, they're there because they believe in like the vision of the project, because they believe in what's happening, because they're around other like-minded people, and friendships and other kind of connections like in the community around the project. So I think those are those are kind of like more important things. And yeah, I've seen this thing even where if you talk about using token incentives to build a community, it's like like begets like. So if you kind of have people coming in that are just trying to find like the next project that's giving away tokens, that kind of sets a certain tone and kind of a vibe in your community. And then you get like more of that, and it's like I think projects that relied heavily on these techniques are like suffer the most, like in the bear. Like they don't like have these true believers, like, and those people are probably not in crypto. Like they're chasing something somewhere else basically at this point, if they didn't really care about the principles involved. So anyway, maybe I don't know if that's a contrarian take, but that's a little bit of my point of view.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And that's definitely true that many projects are suffering with the people who are not really interested in the core of the functions of the visions, but they want to get a faster rewards. But I think more about the incentivizing of like long-term supporters, rewarding all these people who do it from the day one with the tokens or with other rewards. Probably Jason from Axelar can describe his view on like supporting of the people who survived this bear market with the founders and with the project teams.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely in agreement with Derek here. I see these things just as a way to like acquire customers, and they might have worked well in the bull because it could have like gave you a bump in metrics like engagement and such. But really, in the bear market, everyone that's left are in here for the technology, right? And that's kind of what you want. I think another question you have to ask yourself is what part of the value chain do you play in? So, given that Axelar is building infrastructure and our primary audience is developers, I don't think developers care as much about airdrops or community incentive as much as the end user. So in fact, Axelar did do a very small airdrop to some of the users that use the satellite bridge. And from what we've seen in the look back, we didn't actually see like increased usage or stickiness in our community. Of course, this is only one data point, but I think we just have to be very clear on who your target audience is and like why do you want them in the first place, and how does really like incentives or airdrops really contribute to your goals.
Thanks, Jason. And here we go to the next audience of like from developers to traders. As we know, the Hashflow is a trading protocol. And Varun, we really excited to hear your opinion on different community rewarding tools and mechanics. How do you work with the traders? How do you reward them during bearish and bullish times?
So I think again, I pretty much echo with what Derek said earlier and Jason, in the sense that the rewards and mechanisms, they work really, really well in the bull market sentiments, where pretty much because there's so much noise in the bull market, and everyone is chasing the next airdrop, or basically the way to cut through the noise is to use kind of incentives to draw people to you. But in the bear markets, because there's as much noise, you can actually deploy different tactics, or basically be more product centric and use that to actually build your loyal user base who is there because they believe in the core principles of what you're building, right? So that said, we did do airdrop when we launched a token in November, and I think a good chunk of the people, like we expected, some people stayed of that, but there was also a bunch of people who were speculating for a while and then got the tokens, and then you've never seen them again, right? So the TLDR is we did have the rewards mechanism, but if I have to go back again and figure out how would I do the rewards, I'd rather incorporate this new feedback what Derek just shared, in the sense that be a bit more conservative in terms of how we allocate tokens, especially because many times when people oftentimes conflate product market fit with people using your product purely for the tokens and being mercenaries. So it's actually interesting to see how you can actually drive product usage without having a token. And once you actually reach a certain milestone, then I think it's a good idea to start adding tokens, right? Because many times, many projects launch tokens first in the hopes of building a product market fit using tokens as an incentive, which I think is actually not the best way to go about it. You're much better off actually building the PMF first and then using that to kind of boost that PMF with token incentives. But at the same time, I think the airdrop mechanism is kind of like more like that trying. It's a little outdated, I think, at this point. There might be different ways to incentivize them, but I don't think airdrops are serving the same purpose that they used to back in the day.
Thank you for sharing your view, Varun. And basically, we see that all three projects, you have all pretty same view on these initiatives with the airdrops and community rewards. And here we can go with the next with the question about what is in your opinion during the bear market, what is the more productive ways for founders and for teams of acquiring new people to the project and get them use it and know more about your technologies and infrastructure that you build. Is it some educational programs or other ways how you work with the communities right now? So we can start with anybody who has thoughts right now.
So actually, I can share some. I also want to close the loop on the previous comment, right? Just to add to one more point there. This is not to say that giving tokens is a bad thing. In fact, I think giving tokens is still a good thing because that allows you to decentralize the community further, and it expands the number of people who own tokens. But I think the requirement or the criteria that you use to determine who should own the token could be a bit more sophisticated, right? So just as opposed to simply just interacting with the product once and get the tokens, that's probably a bad way to churn who's like really behind you versus who is just there for mercenary rewards and move away, right? So that being said, this is a good segue into your current question, which is like, how are we trying to build a user base now in this kind of market environment? So I think one of the things we've been doing is we've been innovating at the DAO level. I think DAOs are like interesting in the sense that they're a great way to foster community. Because until last year, I think the DAO concept was basically a bunch of people own tokens and they vote on some proposals, and then that's the end all be all of it, right? So and I think what we've been thinking about is DAOs are a great way to incentivize people from any skill sets. It's almost like a good brand marketing tool that could be used if used correctly. It can be used to build a lot of hype, right? Because there are lots of people who don't have technical background but still want to contribute. You can actually leverage your DAO to basically incentivize people to help you with those kind of things, including like blog writing or meme making, or basically building awareness around your project. And I think building a DAO that actually runs the community in that way is actually a good direction to go to, which is something we're doing with Hashverse, where we've been leveraging NFTs and also incentivizing people to complete different tasks that directly benefit the community as a whole. And I think that's a great way to bootstrap your community and also incentivize more people to participate, right? And then you can design these tasks to be related to the use of your product. It could also be about things that directly benefit your community. But all in all, you're doing three things, right? One is you're giving new users a taste of what your product looks like, what it feels like. And then B, you're also using these tasks to drive more activity on your protocol. And then three, you're also using that to generate hype around your project, right? So these are the three things that you can do really, really well by leveraging your DAO. But then again, depends on, the project. The way you design these things might be slightly different. But I think that's sort of how we've been thinking about it.
Okay, Warren, thank you so much for sharing your insights on how to work with the community during the bearish markets. Probably it might be the good advisory for some founders that want to gather people for their products during that time. And here we can go for the next topic of builders right now in crypto. More general topic. What do you think, in your opinion, which industries in crypto, industries and sectors need more builders right now? As Axelar builds a lot, and your target audience is developers in crypto, probably you can share some insights where, in your opinion, you see we need more builders in crypto right now.
Yeah, for sure. I have the privilege of speaking with like hundreds of different teams in crypto. And, I'm obviously biased given the nature of the panel, but I do think one of the areas where we need more builders are people building natively cross-chain apps, right? And why I think this is because cross-chain technology, particularly the cross-chain infrastructure that we have, has evolved so much in the last 12 months, even last 6 months, right? A lot of the apps that we see today that's currently on mainnet, they're designed the way they're designed in many cases because of limitations in cross-chain infrastructure. Like a lot of people still see cross-chain as just asset transfers, right? People aren't even aware really appreciate what message passing and the ability to send any payload across chains can really mean, how that simplifies the UX by creating these one-click experiences, how that massively improves the security. And what this really unlocks are like a lot of use cases that previously just weren't possible, right? Like, some of the things I mentioned is now with Axelar, you can build things like cross-chain lending or cross-chain swaps. Sure, that's almost like what we see today on single chain with a twist, right? But there's also completely new use cases like cross-chain treasury management, like cross-chain notifications, or even cross-chain name services. And these things are really like quite different. And a lot of people have thought of them, but there isn't a one right way of building yet. The winner is yet to be seen. So I think that's one area. And I think the second area is what we're seeing is there's more and more engagement from large enterprises, whether that's big tech or big banks. And I think a lot of efforts currently in crypto is being spent like optimizing certain things. It's like, that slightly better DEX on that slightly more performant L1 versus like thinking about how do I engage like the Stripes of the world who wants to be more active in like crypto payments, but doesn't really know how to solve problems like making transactions gasless cross-chain or things like that. I see that as an infrastructure provider, Axelar, we have a lot of the tools on the back end. And we know we can see demand from a lot of the enterprises on the other side. But we do need talented teams in the middle to kind of like bring it all together and really get more people, get big companies, get more regular users into the space and take the tech forwards.
Cool. I can chime in as well. On that point, I agree with many of the points made there. Actually, if I go back to Varun and the point about DAOs, I would echo that that is like one way that Moonbeam is engaging with the audience. So the question of like, well, how to engage your community during the bear, it is to just focus on that core nucleus, like this, community of believers that is there for the tech or is there because they believe in the project. But I think DAO-like structures are great ways to kind of enrich like that engagement, and so and move people from being kind of just token holders and maybe following socials and commenting to being actual active participants. And so on Moonbeam, for example, it has like a full on-chain governance system. It's actually in the process of going through a major upgrade to something called OpenGov, which is this very sophisticated on-chain governance system. It controls a whole lot of things, like upgrades, as well as many other governance tracks that manage different parts of the system. And so this is an area where we're seeing great engagement from the community into this like new system, and that's one of the key focuses for the year is to help facilitate as much of that engagement as possible. And it's kind of not only good from an engagement perspective, but these governance systems, especially related to kind of managing kind of the core protocol itself. It's like part of the security of the chain, right? Like so, insofar as you have on-chain governance dictating things like upgrades, you need turnout and participation to even prevent a single whale from being able to dictate the direction that the chain goes. So that's definitely one thing that rang true for me when Varun was talking about it. In terms of things that need more investment, I mean, I would definitely say that it's like UX. And I started off by talking about kind of Web 2 background moving into Web 3, and I would say that is one of the things that is a big difference. Like when I think about the Web 2 kind of cloud products I worked on in the past, I kind of blow people's minds and I talk about how of the product org that I used to have, maybe a third of them were devoted to UX, like in this like Web 2 setting, right? And that was not just like front-end engineers, that was designers and people doing like UX research, and like a lot of investment goes into UX in like a regular Web 2 product setting. And then you meet like a Web 3 protocol team, and there's like one like design person maybe, right? Or they're like, we're going to hire someone from Upwork to just build like some icons and some graphics kind of thing. And so I think there's a big gap there in terms of attention to UX. But just to tie it also to some of the things that Jason mentioned, I'm a big believer that approved UX is one of the key unlocks that's made possible by cross-chain. And so, a lot of the scenarios, even some of the scenarios that, are common scenarios between Axelar and Moonbeam that I see developers, starting to build, really are centered around using cross-chain as a way to hide infrastructural complexity away from users and offer simpler user experiences. And so I think, Jason mentioned this like one-click thing where, one of the scenarios that we've worked on together is powering one-click dot deposits on Osmosis. And so there, the dot is flowing all the way from Polkadot via Moonbeam, kind of transferred via XCM, then to Axelar, and then I believe there's probably an IBC leg there, moving it all the way to Osmosis. And so there's like all these things happening behind the scenes, like in that scenario. But like the end user has this very simple experience of just being offered a dot deposit address and being able to LP dot into like an Osmosis pool. And so I think this feels Web 2 like to me in a way, right? Where you're, as the user, you don't need to know about the bridging or which chain you're on or like, any of these underlying infrastructure details. You're just expressing some higher level intent. And then behind the scenes, sure, there's actually, in this case, like 3 different blockchains that were involved in satisfying that request, just like there might be, 3 different, PaaS services or servers or something, satisfying your Web 2 mobile app request. But, the user doesn't need to know about them. So I think that's definitely feels like the right way forward. And, I think kind of tackling some of these UX issues is something that, will help bring on, that's friction right now and bringing on more users, and that'll be a big unlock to bringing on more users to Web3 application experiences.
Great, thanks, Jason and Derek. And when you're talking about the builders that we need more in the space, you both mentioned cross-chain. So, what are currently the challenges these builders are facing, or even your own projects? I'll let anyone who wants to answer go.
I can just keep going and then pass it off to the other folks here. But I would say that for cross-chain, it's just new, right? So a lot of these cross-chain technologies like went to mainnet like last year in 22, and so they're new. There's like this new design space, starting to see lots of interesting ways of painting on these new canvases have been created. So there's teams that are building new architectures. We're seeing like hub and spoke architecture is one of the multi-chain architectures that we're seeing several teams pursue. But I would say the challenge is that, the tools, a lot of the tools are still designed for single chain development. And so, even there's explorers, there's a lot of the tools are just have this single chain assumption in mind. And so when you move to this native multi-chain environment, I would say that there's still maturation of the dev tooling needed to be, let's say, multi-chain aware. So things like, for example, you might have a scenario spanning 3 chains. How do you trace a transaction that was kind of relayed via a messaging system across 3 chains? To have some kind of IDs where you can kind of click through and trace it. That's often not possible right now, but I'm sure that will be possible as tooling kind of improves around these cross-chain scenarios.
Yeah, I agree with Derek. Building out additional developer services and tooling is one of the main focuses here at Axelar. But then it goes beyond that. We've also learned that even after we've built out the tooling and the features, there's still a massive education curve just because building cross-chain apps is so new. So we've also spent a lot of time, building out smart contract examples, building out sandbox environments, and really just taking it one step closer so devs can experience this or be inspired by it. And then, on top of that, we're doing lots of hackathons. We're doing lots of accelerators to just kind of get people started. What we're hopeful for is that within this quarter and the next, when a lot of these first batch of these native cross-chain applications start hitting the market and people start to actually touch and feel them, it'll create this flywheel effect where it'll inspire other devs to try it out, really go down the rabbit hole, and the first time they did it with crypto, but now doing it with cross-chain applications. We're still super early, but that's exactly where the opportunity is.
Great. And Varun, how about you? What have been some of the challenges, or what are the challenges that you see for builders?
So is this particularly in context of hash on cross-chain or just generally?
Generally as well.
Yeah, because I think, again, to me, I think generally the way I see it is, I was talking about this in a different space as well, is that when the question came to what's missing before we can have mass adoption, and I think the core infrastructure required for enabling a seamless UX for any average Joe to just participate in this user product is just still not there, right? There's still a lot to be built in terms of making this a very, very, especially I'm speaking from the point of view of having a consumer-focused application where you want to just simply abstract away all the complexity from the user and just allow them to interact and not be able to tell the difference between whether it's a decentralized app or centralized app. They should all be irrelevant, right? For an end user, they should just go and use the application just like anything else. And to get to that point of abstraction, there's a lot of infra that needs to be developed, right? So I think that's the big challenge because it's difficult to do. And I know lots of people are working towards that. And I'm pretty optimistic about having something really, really cool the next year or two. And that's something we've been pretty super razor focused at Hashflow as well. But I think that's, to me, the most important thing is how do we nail down the UX to the point where the user experience is far more safe and secure, but at the same time feels extremely seamless, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge for the next cycle.
Thanks, everyone. We are running into almost the audience Q&A time. So I'm going to ask our last question to our panel, but it's been really a great discussion so far about building in the bear market. You guys said it's a slower time at the moment. So therefore, there's time to build, and it's important to focus on, making sure you have a strong UX, a good product market fit, and of course, establishing the fundamentals so that the projects can essentially fuel themselves to the next cycle. But as always, we have a couple of listeners and a wide range of audience members, and they range from newcomers, OGs, builders, even future founders. And I think it would be great to hear from you guys if you had one piece of advice to our audience And of course, keeping the bear market in mind, what would your advice be? Jason, you know what? I'll let you kick that one off.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't want to sound generic and say keep building, but I'd say like especially to the builders and future founders to really like stick to basics, identify problems in crypto and Web3. I think there's lots of them. Don't really worry too much about what others are doing, but then really pay attention to emerging technologies, the space and the technologies that's evolving is going so quick. I think this creates lots of new opportunities. The successes we saw in the last 12 months, 24 months doesn't necessarily apply to the future. I think if you're able to leverage some of these existing technology, like this Axelar's decentralized cross-chain infrastructure, and find a real problem, there will be a huge opportunity.
Varun, go ahead.
Yeah, same here. I was going to say, focusing on fundamentals, and also I think once again, don't get carried away by any distractions. In the bull market, it's kind of everyone's euphoric, but in this market, it's like the sentiment is usually bad, or people will say crypto is a scam, it's over, and things like that. So don't let those things deter you from building, because if you believe in the core fundamentals and driven by the right ideology that's driving all of us, then basically you're building for so basically build with the mission, right? Nothing, and just focus on that. Don't let anything else drag you down, right? So that being said, also be open-minded towards pivoting and more importantly, or adapting to what the market needs, right? Because sometimes I do know that many people have the tendency to get carried away because they believe in something, but then they don't quite react to what the market wants, and they want to keep pursuing what they already believe in, how the world should be like, when the world wants something else, right? So be open-minded towards feedback and be ready to make changes to your product and so on as the markets evolve, because crypto changes or evolves at a very rapid rate, right? So which means you have to be dynamic enough to basically be ready to make those changes, right? And it's okay to make those changes, because we've done that iteration several times, and over time it pays you off, because if you're building with fundamentals in mind and have an open mind towards building for the users, I think that's the best way to go about doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great set of comments from both Jason and Varun. I almost don't want to add anything, but I would just echo a lot of the same sentiment that, yeah, it's a great time to build. But for me, it's I think Varun said it earlier that, like build a product and maybe like, don't worry as much about the token. I think there's something to that where, a token can be a great, like a very powerful, it can be a great accelerant. It can like help form a community. You'll need it ultimately if you're building a protocol to be an actually decentralized protocol. But like, I think in bull times, the token becomes the product in a way. And, here's the time to really focus on, I like using an old school Web2 terminology, the customer, right? And so people look at me funny sometimes when I'm talking about the customer, because people don't use that terminology in Web3. But I think it's helpful to think about it that way, to say, hey, like I'm trying to build a product, like who's the customer? Let's get close to the customer, understand like what it is that is like the pain point and the difficult thing for them to do, and like talk to them a bunch, like listen to them, get the product in their hands, listen to their feedback, iterate like on the product, build something that would be generally useful, even if there isn't a token. And then like if you are building a protocol, then there's like this very powerful kind of tool you have at your disposal to like have a token, which can then act as a great accelerant and can expand the user base of the product and all of these other things. But I'd just go, it's back to the fundamentals of what is the product, what is the problem you're solving, and you don't need to be solving like nuclear fusion or anything. If you just find something that's like a real problem, and you attack it and kind of iterate on on the product and like listen to feedback from users. People are generally like very like helpful in this space, right? Like they will give you feedback. You can call on almost anyone. Like I take calls like during like multiple times during the week just to give feedback to other builders and stuff. And so I think that's like different than Web2, where people are much less generous with their time, I think is what I would say. And so it's a great environment to build a product. You just have to, kind of just be focused on that and not get distracted by, by the token, by these other things, and then just use that as a tool in your arsenal for building whatever it is you want to build.
Great advice, guys. I think that was very valuable for our audience and also for, well, for me, and I probably speak for Peter as well. So that has pretty much led us into the audience Q&A, and we would like to open it up to you guys now. So either you can request to speak, and we will give you access to ask your question to, well, either all three of our guests or just one of our guests. And if you don't want to speak, you can also write your question in the comments, and I can then read it out loud. So we already have one person, Fame, who has requested to speak. We will give you access. It's just connecting, but Fame, you should be able
can you hear me?
To speak and ask your question very soon.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello. Yes, we can hear
Hey,
you.
by the way, Morningstar, thanks for hosting this. I think I met a lot of your team at X Day, actually. I appreciate that you guys are doing some like an event like this. So I'm the founder and CEO of Fame Social Media, and we're building in Web3. And the problem that I'm seeing in crypto is the same problem I'm seeing in this conversation. And that would be that there is talk of UX improvement, and there is talk of user experience and the customer, and that's good. Those are encouraging things. I'm happy to hear that. The problem is we're still talking about infrastructure of crypto, bridges, exchanges, and there needs to be more of a focus on what the customers actually want. The customers aren't going to show up just because the UX is better on a product that they aren't that interested in. That's still like a very small fraction of people in the world. So we need to start talking more about building things, like social media or like, gaming platforms and things like that that are built for fun first. They're built for play. They're built for singing, dancing, all the things that people want to do, and solve the problems that exist in like we're trying to solve the problems that exist in other social media platforms. Things people don't like about corporate control and their data, no control over their data. Stuff like that. And those are a lot of the problems that need to be solved first. And then we can do the infrastructure stuff, but I really take issue with the fact of taking the technology and trying to make it better for the user.
Sorry for interrupting, but moving back to the question itself for the speakers. Sure. So we understand that you're building the social media platform for Web3, which is also the quite important and trendy topic right now. And here we're really excited to see your questions. What it's about for founders.
Yeah. So the question is, do you guys have any plans on changing your focus a little bit to more of an application, user-oriented, going out and finding out what problems people want solved in the world, not just to use like a bridge better, because that's a very small fraction. What are you guys doing to attract people from the mainstream into crypto?
Thanks for your question. Derek?
Yeah, I could take it first up. So, I mean, you're correct, right? I mean, like Moonbeam is an infrastructure platform. So there are different layers or parts of the Web3 stack. And, our project happens to be, at this infrastructure layer where our customer is like the developer. But, that doesn't mean that we're not, Moonbeam and our work can't play a role in helping, bring new users like into crypto as you were describing. And so while I'd say that historically, kind of if I look at like the last a year ago and all of these things, the audience like on Moonbeam tended to be, I'll call them crypto natives, let's say, there was, DeFi users and like other things like this. I do start to see a shift now in the bear where, those users, that user base is like not that large. So look, the question is like, what are people building like on Moonbeam and what are the new projects that are just starting out building? And I would say that I do see more project teams that are, thinking along the lines that you were describing of like, asking that question, like, how do I kind of attack an audience that isn't necessarily kind of an expert, like DeFi, like user base, but, is more of a general user base. And how do I build something that's genuinely better than the status quo or what exists today using like Web3 technologies. And while that's still emerging, I do see some pretty promising things in, I would say that like it's in the kind of TradFi kind of like DeFi hybrid kind of scenarios where you might have a regular fintech company that then is like attaching like into like a DeFi like on the back end, but the front end experience is like they already have like a user base, and so that's like an interesting way where people might not even realize that they're interacting with like blockchain based systems like on the back end through like a regular like Web2 experience. And there are other use cases like for example like loyalty point programs, some other like corporate kind of like programs where I think some of these people are realizing that blockchains are like just inherently better than some of the existing like technologies that have been around to date. And so yeah, that's another area where on Moonbeam at least we're seeing some folks pursue that, and then being able to use like tokenized like points, give like users options that they didn't have like in kind of the closed like garden systems that exist today for a lot of these things.
Thank you. I appreciate the response.
Yeah, just to like build on top of that is I agree with you, right? We need more apps that's solving like a real problem and onboarding, non-crypto native users. But, I actually think having better infrastructure is what's going to help enable apps like yours to achieve that. I'll give you an example. Like, let's just talk about like the wallet experience today, right? Even though there's been like a lot of wallets trying to become a truly natively cross-chain wallet, but like even basic things, right? Seeing a total account balance of tokens across different chains and all of this stuff is like very complicated today. Like we're not at a stage where our infrastructure allows us to be like chain agnostic, right? So we're still at the point where a non-crypto native person downloads a wallet or app and they have to figure out like how to toggle between chains, send between stuff, and it's very hard for them to use other applications. But for example, the fact that Axelar's message passing goes beyond asset transfers, it actually allows you to combine like multiple steps, if you will. Like you can combine like a swap transaction, a bridging transaction, and then stake into another contract and on a separate chain, all in one click, abstracting away like the complexities behind. So from like, if my mom was using an app, she can now, for example, just click a button and now like maybe sold her NFT, moved it from one chain to another and listed on OpenSea. And she has no idea that she's done that, but now she can do it in one click versus the state today. She'd have to like, experiment a bunch of things, maybe get rugged, figure things out before she can finally like put it onto OpenSea and move it across chains. And you need better infrastructure to achieve this.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree with all that. I just think there needs to be a little bit more of a focus on the things that people want to do, not just making what the things they can do in blockchain easier. That's all. But I thank you. I appreciate your response.
Thank you for your question, Fame, and Derek and Jason for answering that. We don't have any audience questions at the moment. We still have a couple of minutes in our Twitter spaces. So if you do have a question, now would be a great time to ask it. Again, feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to speak out loud. While we wait for one more audience question to come in, perhaps another question from me and from Peter is, so what feature or upcoming releases can we expect, and what are you looking most forward to? Who wants to go first?
Oh, I think I'll go. so I think we actually just released a roadmap today, so that actually outlines all the features that are going to be coming out from Hashflow. So if you go to Hashflow's Twitter, you can literally access the entire blog post that outlines everything in Q1, Q2, and rest of the year, right? But I think one of the key things that I'm looking forward to by the end of this year, obviously, besides our gamified DAO that goes out this quarter, I think one of the interesting things that will be shipping towards the end is we've been researching how to build so for context, we are a trading platform, right? So one of the goals for us to build is to build the most seamless trading experience. That doesn't include the counterparty risk that comes with using a centralized venue, but at the same time recreates that sort of experience that allows more retail to go and use those platforms, right? So one of the things that we want to ship by end of this year is the limit order book that can deliver on that kind of user experience. At the same time, also removing the counterparty risk that led to the fiasco of FTX and things like that, right? So that's something we'll be looking forward to a lot. And the second feature, actually, I was going to say is since we've been talking about cross-chain, we'll be deploying so we'll be adding a EVM to non-EVM native cross-chain support in Q2. So at the moment we do all EVM cross-chain swaps, but I think the next that'll be coming out is people will be able to natively swap between, for example, ETH to Solana or any other non-EVM, just like they're swapping on a centralized venue, right? So that's something that's going to be coming out in Q2. So that's another thing to look forward to.
Nice, Varun. Thanks. We'll be keeping an eye out for that. Jason, what about for Axelar?
We have a lot of exciting developments at Axelar, but we're saving a lot of them for the Interop Summit, which is a conference that we're hosting in the Feb. But I guess a little bit of alpha leak is that we are launching a V2 of Axelar, and one of the main things will be the enabling of permissionless deployment. The implication of this is, any blockchain, small or big, can actually add themselves to the Axelar network themselves. And so, today we're connected to 30 chains, and it actually takes quite a bit of engineering work from the Axelar side to add a new chain, not just adding it, but also testing it. With this new model, we'll be able to scale interoperability to all of the smaller blockchain, the side chains like Polygon supernets, Avalanche subnets, etc. So yeah, we're really excited to have this additional extension of our infrastructure.
Thanks for the alpha, Jason. And Derek, what about for you?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say that the themes will continue to be around cross-chain use cases and interoperability. So there's a number of improvements on the XCM side. So this is the support on Moonbeam for the native Polkadot XCM messaging. There's an XCM v3 large upgrade that's coming soon. There's also a whole bunch of performance improvements that are some on Moonbeam, but some also coming from Polkadot itself, since we're one of the shards basically on Polkadot. So those are all kind of great things that have been worked on for quite some time that will improve throughput and kind of set up Moonbeam for kind of the next wave quite nicely. But the other thing I mentioned that is top of mind are these governance scenarios, engaging with the existing this core community that's around Moonbeam, and being able to bring as much of the key decision making around the protocol into this on-chain governance system, and having it be actually enacted as a result of token holder voting. So I think that's the missing piece sometimes you see in governance systems is you vote on something, but then it's up to some group of people to carry out the will of the people. But in Substrate and the systems that we have on Moonbeam, one of the distinguishing characteristics is that you vote on something and then it actually happens. And so we're making a lot of progress in that area to make to truly make it everything kind of controlled by the DAO.
Amazing. Thanks, Derek. Well, I think that also concludes our Twitter Spaces today. Again, a huge thank you for everyone that joined our space, and also, of course, to Varun, Jason, and Derek for taking the time to talk to us about how you've been building in the bear market, the benefits of building in the bear market, and also to hear that you will continue to build, and that we all have something to look forward to in the upcoming months. And so we will be hosting more of these sessions in the coming year. So we're looking forward to inviting you to those. And until then, keep an eye out for another Twitter Spaces, and have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.